Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Suleiman. Tonight, we're looking at the arrest of DCP ABBA KYARI, who was Commander IGP Rapid Response Team. KYARI was suspended by the police after US FBI indicted him in the fraud case involving a popular fraudster, Ramon Abbas, but also known as Hush Pipi, in July last year. US authorities said that KYARI was a conspirator with Hush Pipi in a $1.1 million deal to defraud a Qatari businessman. In response to FBI allegations, the police set up a panel to investigate the matter, and this panel was led by a DIG. While the report of the panel was being awaited, the Police Service Commission ordered that the panel submit its report within 2 weeks. That is, after 6 months of waiting. But to compound matters for ABBA KYARI, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, this morning accused KYARI of membership of an international drug cartel. KYARI and 4 others have since been arrested by the police and handed over to NDLEA. So tonight we're asking, what are the allegations against KYARI? How damaging are these allegations to the integrity of the police? Is there a drug ring in the police or, in fact, in the NDLEA itself? With me to discuss these matters are Nigerians familiar with issues of security and crime. Mr. Lawrence Alobi is a lawyer, a retired police commissioner for the FCT, and presently chairman High-Tech Security Services and Training. Mr. Salahuddin Hashim is a public affairs analyst and program manager, defense and security for the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, popularly known as CISLAC. Welcome to Daily Politics, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. But before we go, we'll take a minute to show you a video released earlier by NDLEA on this matter. Stay with us.
But categorically it's up to 25. Duka is 25. But when the smart must not soon 5. So soon as I tested now. Kashi now. Soon. Must not soon as I tested now. Okay. I just one of model navigation. Okay. As soon as I Suguma to be and Kada so. Okay. There are 3 bags. So, but if they are there, they have not there. I'm a total loss is 5 kg. I'm also around the symbol. It's one of my view. In the day, Suka Zora should move on Tababo. Exactly in the Ake recovery.
Okay, please.
10.
No.
14. Okay. Okay. She might have been in the office. No, no.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics, and we're going straight into the discussion on ABBA KYARI's arrest earlier today on allegations of being part of a member of a drug cartel. CP Lawrence, we have allegations upon an allegation because ABBA KYARI is still under suspension for a case against him that in which the police were investigating that he's supposed to have been involved in or indicted by the FBI. And then on top, we now have this. Is one a confirmation of the other?
Yeah, normally in the civil service rule, public service rules, and also police act, police regulation, when an officer is being accused of any serious offense, either you are interdicted or you are suspended. And that suspension to enable the authority to carry out a full-scale investigation about allegation against you. And if you're found to be culpable, there are procedures which would go either disciplinary process, like in the police, for an officer like his caliber, he's going to face a panel, disciplinary panel at the force headquarters. And he'll be queried, of course, initially he'll be queried. And that query now, what his explanation, if he's found to be culpable, or if reasons he gave for defense are not accepted or does not exonerate him, of course he appeared before a panel. And that panel will now, after listening to him, and they will they find him guilty, his papers are sent to the Police Service Commission, who now sanction and confirm the punishment. Either his entire is dismissed or reduced in rank or retired, and then thereafter, if this criminal element in that sort of case is handed over for prosecution, this is the process that's being carried in the police when an officer has breached the rules of ethics of the profession, or get involved in anything that is criminal, because it's a claim now, police act and police regulations, you're not supposed to do any such things.
Okay, but CP, you rose to that level in the police, commissioner of police, so only a few more steps ahead.
Yes.
Is it not worrisome that allegations of fraud leveled against a police officer of that rank is still not completed after 6 months?
Yeah, I think the investigation actually process could be slow, it could also be speedy, depending on those who are handling it. And also depend on the magnitude and nature of the case involved. If it requires visiting places, getting information and so forth, and to ensure that the information is thorough and full scale, it might take some time. Some might also be a very short period, like I said, depending on the magnitude of the case and the complexity of the case. So, and again, it also depends on the capacity of those who are handling the investigation.
Okay.
If they are capable enough, they have well-grounded investigation process and procedures, and the skill, the those skill. These are the things that will determine the quality of the investigation and the speed of the investigation. And also the persons who are involved, maybe they need some logistics, have they been mobilized, they need to travel for here and travel to places and so forth, look for evidence and so forth, procure evidence or materials that are relevant to the case of the investigation, maybe reach out to suspects or persons who are linked to the matter. This is always a process, It's a process, and that's what is normally being done.
Okay. Mr. Slaudin, as someone from the civil society trying to hold institutions of governance accountable for their jobs, is it not worrisome that 6 months after the Police Service Commission even had to issue an order that the Force Criminal Bureau of Investigation, that's the headquarters of all investigations within the police in the country, who are investigating this issue. Is it not worrisome that 6 months after, since August, they had not finished, even though the FBI actually, made available a large cache of documentary evidence on this matter?
All right, I think it would be very important to begin by saying that what we have just seen on the clip is actually an embarrassment, very classical embarrassment, very bizarre, and of course, indeed, something that the authority should take very seriously in terms of, one, rebuilding public trust. A man who was known as a super cop, that was once celebrated, a man like the folklore in the Shakespeare, who enjoyed the enormity of power, turned out to be the carnality of such power. And I find that very worrisome because a public trust, one man who was celebrated to have busted bigger crimes, to have been able to be celebrated as somebody. The National Assembly one day rose up and gave him a standing ovation. But how are the mighty falling? And that, for me, is one of the big concerns that I have. But straight to your question, is the fact that this guy has got friends in high authority.
Okay.
Definitely, you would understand that there will be the spirit of esprit de corps that might want to play. And of course, there will be the character and the possibility of trying to find some kind of solace for him. Looking for some kind of lesser offenses that will give him some soft landing. But what has happened today again now provides a kind of confusion even within the system. Even for those who have been trying to manage the situation, now it will leave them stranded. Where will they go anymore? There will seem to be a challenge of managing the integrity of the system and, of course, trying to rescue a friend. Because, to be honest, it is something that we really need to pay a lot of attention to. And the flip side to this would also be that, would he be alone in this whole situation? Are there people who are even higher, who are also participants, or who have knowledge, or who also have benefited from this kind of situation, from this kind of transaction that we just witnessed? These are the interrogations that will readily come to mind. And of course, these are the things that would, of course, also create the kind of slow pace within which these kind of cases are dispensed. Okay, we all know sometimes there are these disposable attitude that comes to the fore when it comes to this kind of relationship. But I think, to be very honest, until you find an independent platform to investigate this, if you take it back to the system where he has friends and colleagues who are sympathetic, okay, you are likely going to have a situation that might take a longer time before we bust it.
Thank you. So, CP, Commissioner, sir, it appeared, one of the reasons why it appeared in this issue, that because even before they released these videos, they released a statement to the press first that they strongly suspect that ABBA KYARI is a member of this cartel, and that he should, they are on a manhunt for him. They had invited him. He didn't come to the police, and I mean to the NDLA, and then they now went on the media. Is it that the media trial was done to force the police to arrest and hand over ABBA KYARI, or could not the NDLA have directly arrested him earlier?
Yeah, among security agencies, there's what they call synergy and collaboration.
Okay.
And if the NDLA have under their mandate, their authority and power to arrest anybody who commits an offense, be probably provided in the act that established the added agency. So if ABBA KYARI is totally suspected to be involved in drug deals, they have the power to arrest him. But again, maybe that is based on agencies' collaboration and synergy. You don't want to say, okay, because you might go, you don't know, there could be reaction from maybe the boy may be armed, himself may be armed, you don't know. So it's better that through this agency, please, can you hand him over to us? The police will arrest him, hand him over to the NDLA. This is part of the synergy, this collaboration that it normally exists between various agencies. And this is such, the police to have a duty, even if it affects other officers from other agencies, in the military. There are ways and procedures which they can be apprehended and handed over to the appropriate agency for full-scale investigation. So I think what the police did is right. They have no right at all to say they want to shield him, or they will not hand him over. Because otherwise, they have to also to protect the corporate image of the police, Nigerian police force.
Thank you. So that's the issue, the corporate image of the Nigerian police force, you know, based on an action of one senior level officer. But there is also the reaction of the police, even in relation to that. So some people are asking, why did police have to wait until after the issue came to the public domain via the media before making the arrest for him, when the NDLA indicated that they had, you know, initially even wrote him and communicated with police authorities to get him over? What does that say about police reaction to this?
You also know that he was on suspension.
Yes.
So definitely, once those kinds of investigation comes, it will be treated through the official quarters. Okay. And probably also, they believe that he is currently off duty. Then, of course, the claim of access would also readily come to the table. And of course, they might also say they needed to also do their own internal due diligence to be able to establish that indeed that he's also very culpable. But one thing that is very clear is the fact that this was a man who was once celebrated. So definitely there would be some level of seeming protection, you know, for that kind of individual. But how things fell apart so quickly is something that calls for a lot of questions. And two things readily comes to mind. Okay. One is the issue of vetting and audit. And I think personnel audit is something that must be done periodically. Okay. And of course, when recently the chairman of NDLEA said that most of the tertiary institutions would have to subject students as part of prerequisite to drug tests. I think that should go a step further, even into security institutions and security agencies. I can tell you very clearly that most of our personnel are in deep field. Sometimes also take some of these hard drugs, basically to be able to help them maintain psychological threats that seem to have pervaded them. Psychosocial analysis and evaluations are not done regularly. And because of the kinds of things they see and the kind of thing they encounter, sometimes they use them. And these were some of the things that even the armed forces themselves have one of the time publicly mentioned. So personnel audit, and this should be done regularly, not just for purpose of drug tests, but also to be able to check the kinds of, just like you do staff appraisal on an annual basis, to be able to check with code of conduct, check some of these things progressively. And that is on the one side. On the flip side is to also check lifestyle. Okay? Because, of course, there were a lot of red flags before the issue of ABBA KYARI came. His hangout with Kubana, one of the super cop who was flamboyant on Instagram. You need to see the kind. So those kinds of things also. There were a lot of red flags, but people didn't pay attention. Obviously, people felt he was one that was being celebrated and plenty of goodwills were rolling in. But of course, on that net, we didn't see that some of these things were happening. And if you recall that for him also as an individual, and the case he also had with Evans, and how he was also being paid to torture some of his, it tells you very clearly that there is also some seeming coordination and collaboration between crime syndicates and security agencies.
Okay.
And that, for me, is something that calls for a lot of worry.
Okay.
Now, it is not that we are alleging that there is always a collaboration or that there is no crime that goes without any security supervision. But what we are saying, in essence, is there are potentials that bad eggs within the system are providing cover-ups, to some of the emerging criminality that seems to be expanding within the system. And that, for me, is one worry that we also need to put on the table.
Thank you. So he's talking about criminality within the system, about bad eggs within the system, and so on. Most institutions have problems of this sort, but how these institutions deal with these issues is important. And the background case for ABBA KYARI is particularly important here. This is a man under suspension for having been involved with criminal gangs, criminal syndicates. Now, without feeling threatened, without any worry, without any inhibitions, without any, went ahead, as we saw in the video clip, still went ahead to engage in with other sets of criminal syndicates. Could it be that he felt protected within the police?
I can't say he felt protected, because the police itself, based on the police ethics, police professional ethics, police police act and police regulation, it is zero tolerance to such attitude. You don't. As a policeman, you're supposed to be a compass. Your moral character is like a compass for that stimuli, because you are there to enforce the law. If you who is to enforce the law now begin to breed the law, then that's how good enough for the society. So the police itself, we have a mechanism that they check and monitor officers' lifestyle, officer, the kind of people you associate with.
Yes.
This is what it should be the best. Some of these things are no longer
enforced,
being followed as it ought to be.
Okay.
So I think now the force and the management team and the IG should now see how to look at what mechanism, because this kind of things is very important, like I said earlier, to the corporate unit of the force. And this is what the roads that public trust, the public trust on the force. So they should also see how they can monitor activities of officers and men. What kind of lifestyle, what kind of friend does he keep, who are his associates.
Which really begs the question, because ABBA KYARI was arrested today by the police alongside other senior police officers, some of them assistant commissioner of police, superintendent of police, and so on. These are all senior officers. Is there an indication of a wider rot within the police as a whole?
These are boys
or
who are
is it
working in its unit.
Okay.
Like a unit, for instance. For instance, like you have a section in a department in this Daily Trust TV.
Yes.
And those working under you, they say, like this, I said, leadership determines followership. Whatever the leader does, the followers will begin to key in and follow him, and so he dictates the tune, and so whatever he does and so forth. And they want so I think these are boys who work in his team, and they are the ones who are now being solely suspected, and they're the ones who have been apprehended over to NDLA for investigation. So not just they are just that unit, that IG special unit. They are the ones who were involved in this act, and I think, like I said, like he really suggested, that there's a need for the agencies or the institution to monitor. Come up with mechanism where they can monitor the activities to know the moral character, attitude of integrity of each officer, who does he associate, and the company he keeps, and so forth. The kind of lifestyle, and it is not only in the police, it is everywhere. You see in public service, a level 4 officer, if you see the kind of lifestyle he's living, you begin to wonder. And for him, he feels he's arrived. As you go to your mates are doing the work, we can't do it. You see, so I think the federal government sees as a policy where they should develop a policy where they can maybe have a department or commission that can actually monitor of the activities of officers, even those officers will be police themselves should also be police. When I was in service, I have a system where I police my policemen.
Yes.
If I give you an assignment, I'll police to see what you are doing. Are you doing in line with my directive, or you're going outside the directive? And if you're not doing that, no, I have to check it, because this is why you have a feedback mechanism. So I think it's important that the government should come up with a policy or a mechanism where they can monitor the monitor officers in public service. If not in public, even private sector. Private sector can collude with the public servant. So it's not only the police. All sectors, all agencies should be. This thing can be introduced to bring sanity in public service and our public life.
Thank you. So, Mr. Salahuddin, because this idea that it might not be only the police is also reflected in this case as well, because the police, in their own statement, they said that they believe that 2 members of the NDLA itself are also part of this cartel, who are actually working with the ABBA KYARI, the allegations against ABBA KYARI, and these 4 other policemen that are supposed to be. So is that an indication of a wider rot in the agencies, or is it just the police trying to deflect blame after an embarrassing episode against it?
No, it is like when you drag an individual, you also find something else to drag. And of course, we live in a society where you always attack the messenger and not the message itself. And of course, you know very clearly that this situation, there will always be some kind of collusion. Just like we always preach interagency coordination and collaboration, like my Oga, the CP, had said. That is also the way at a lower level, at the lower rung, where you have coordination and collaboration when it comes to the implementation of criminal elements and criminality. One thing that is very clear is that the level at which crime goes unnoticed and unpunished in this country suggests that somebody somewhere is looking the other way around. Okay, and that is in itself one of the major challenges that I've always pulled to our security personnel to say, look, these guys go to anywhere in Africa and around the world, and they come back with beautiful medals. We have one of the best personnel, the police, but what is the environmental factor here that always allow them either to run into challenges or that does not support the success? It is like a system that allows you to thrive, but also provides some kind of bumps that doesn't allow you to go too far. So there are a lot of environmental factors. And those environmental factors suggest and still points to the fact that these guys will get involved in this if you don't provide a sustainable social security net that would help them after retirement. Some of these guys that are currently serving have seen some of their colleagues who have left service and how badly they are faring. Okay, the issue of welfare is one of the fundamental things. So to evade that kind of suffering, because suffering a lot of the time allows you to learn lessons. So they have learned the lessons that these guys who run the system, who were loyal to the system, who didn't get anything at the end of the day. And they now come to them that are in service, requesting for one sort of assistance or the other. Then the guy tells himself, then how do I then not fall in this same situation? So government needs to, again, the review of the recent Police Act, needs to also take very good care of the issue of welfare. Again, we need to go back to it, because the welfare, until we get it correctly, even government itself will find it very difficult to take decisive action. What do you then do even when they leave service? There are lots of our pensioners today that suffer. If you don't have alternative sources of income and you're a pensioner, particularly from the security institution, and knowing fully well that you have a training of not protesting if your rights are not paid in due time, and it is called a mutiny. That kind of mentality continues to suppress your action in terms of what you do next.
Barrister, it's fine what Mr. Salahuddin is saying, that the poor welfare in the police can be responsible. But the amount of money to which we're talking about here is not the kind of money that somebody can say welfare about. In the Hush PP case, the amount involved was 1.1 million US dollars. But we're talking about 500, 600 million naira. That's not the kind of money that anyone would say they need in order for their welfare to be taken care of, whether they are pensioners or whatever, right? And here we see thousands of dollars also being exchanging hands in this case. We are talking about big money here that is being involved. So as the police itself, as a law enforcement agency, what kind of, is it criminality or just the kind of welfare that is talking about, or people are just being criminal minded?
No, you see, you can't work in an environment or an institution where you're not well paid in terms of remuneration. And if you have somebody who has moral values, you come from a family that you don't want to, because have to put yourself to shame, a family to shame, you could be tempted.
Yeah.
You could be tempted. Some of us sometimes they bring money and say, I've just done my duty. That doesn't make me I will remain a poor man. Sometimes the goodwill you get.
Yeah.
What he's saying generally is that the poor welfare actually is a factor that makes them to be very vulnerable to these corrupt practices. But when I was in mobile as a mobile constable, when they were paying had an allowance, disturbance allowance, when we go out giving dry ration. If you go to a road block, you give us bribe, we make you to chew the money, make you to do frog jump. Because we know we are being paid. But when you're not being paid, we are sent on the road, you are hungry, nobody cares. What they want, you have to do the job. You have to look at circumvent. Look how the cut corners. So these are the things the society itself, environment creates this kind of attitude. When you are in a place where you are being catered for, you bluff. But when you are now being put in a situation where you are so vulnerable, you are hungry, like you said, people retire, they are in penury, and nobody, they see other friends, other some of their colleagues, other services, or even the same service, who have the opportunity to work maybe juicy areas and so forth, living very lavish life, and they are living in penury. They'll be tempted to say, what is it? What am I? And they can be succumb to corrupt practices. So, but when there's that, when you have institution, you have a strong institution that are well paid, well remunerated, they have training and capacity building, they are being given that moral and spiritual education. They have that sense of value, to say no to corruption. But when you because as a family man, you think about your needs, family needs and so forth. So you also want to meet these needs. People see others are doing well. Like I said, sometimes you see in the ministry, a level 4 officer, the kind of lifestyle he's living. But when you now say, okay, why should I be doing this? Am I Mumu?
So I think that at this point, maybe we'll just take a minute and we'll be back, a short break, so that when we come back, we continue other issues. For example, how much damage has this issue done to the police? And not just the police, but also other armed and security forces in the country, all uniformed forces in the country. But also there are other issues. Maybe if ABBA KYARI had been extradited to the US initially, maybe this would not have happened. But when we return, we'll take a look into all of these issues and more. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. You can also follow us on all our social media platforms, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and now Twitter as well. We were discussing issues around the arrest of DCP, Deputy Commissioner of Police, ABBA KYARI, earlier this morning. So, Mrs. Loudon, I continue with it. How much damage can a case such as this do to the integrity, to the image of the police, given the fact that that image already had issues among Nigerians in the first place?
I'll tell you one immediate damage, and the very immediate damage was the justification of the NSAS. Okay. It tells us very clearly that, okay, yes, those guys who came out to mobilize voices against the atrocities going on within the security institution, and particularly the police, were not wrong after all. And of course, the consequences would be that the larger society and the various infrastructure then suffered what really happened. So yes, what had happened over the NSAS, the fallout of that, and how has the police responded in terms of image making and laundering its activities, and of course the level of porous that also has pervaded our internal security suggests, and such as this now suggests to us that the internal security system is no longer interested in human security component, but they are interested in just how to facilitate some kind of immediate interest, organized crimes, and the things like that. And of course, it takes us to the failure of internal security. And we talk about recently the number of assaulted rifles that have left the policing system. The question between then and now is that what has actually happened, who is actually talking about it, who is further investigating, so it tells you that if you leave a man who is vulnerable, like we said, it is not usually a justification, but of course it is it is an enabler. If you enable somebody who carries a rifle and you leave him hungry, tendencies are there that he will look at that rifle and find a way to convert it to economy. So the economy of criminality.
But the issue is, how does this affect the image of the police?
Absolutely.
You have a video clip that has gone viral all over the world of a senior police officer actually trying to arrange a deal, involving drugs, in which, in fact, he is trying to steal drug that drug cartels up.
In fact, so I was trying to tie that. Okay. I was going to tie that initial explanation, one, to the global committee of policing, that now would be looked at again, even if, for instance, the IG is attending an Interpol meeting or is attending a meeting at the regional level of, people will look at him with some level of disdain and sarcasm to say that, look, if at this level this is happening, then of course it is because we have not seen some additional upper echelon expose. So that will actually cast some level of aspersion, and to say that now Nigeria is even the vice president of Interpol, I think, if not vice president of the president. So that in itself might actually cost us that position, because we cannot be piloting a global brand, whilst the institution that throws you up or that recommended you is actually going through this kind of ordeal. So for me, that is also a very fundamental challenge. Even at the regional level, even at the continental level, we do a lot of peace mission, peacekeeping. A lot of these guys would then be having a reconsideration whether or not to have peacekeeping operations from Nigeria. And you know how influential our policing has been like in other African nations. But now there will be a lot of reconsideration around that.
Thank you. But police,
talking about issue of image. You see, the action of every police officer or every policeman, it can make or mar the corporate image of the force. But that should not mean that the force itself should be seen his actions it should not be seen, the police to be seen as being
a total
failure.
Yeah.
We have some good, very fine police officers, like every other institution.
Okay.
You have bad eggs, you have deviants, who don't comply with the rules. There are even the public service, military, everywhere. Just like among the 12 disciples, there was a Judas. So there are bound to be this problem. But the point is that what effort is the institution doing to ensure that such bad eggs are flushed out and put up mechanism to monitor and see that we have standard that in line with our professional standards.
So in your opinion, what do you think, what is the next step for the police now?
For the police now,
beyond handing over ABBA KYARI and co. to the NDLA, what is the next step for the police, considering particularly the fact that there was already an existing case which the police are supposed to have been investigating for 6 months. So what was the next step for the police now?
You see, now what lesson learned?
Okay.
When an incident occurs, you kind of do analysis. What lesson have the police learned from this ABBA KYARI incident, from the one of him romancing with a froster, and now we're dealing with a drug cartel? The lesson is that the police should be more wary, be more disturbed, and put a mechanism. And the IG says zero tolerance to such situations, because he's, as the IG, under his tenure, he should not tolerate such things, and he should come out in very strong terms, condemning such actions. And this shows.
Can we expect heads to roll within the police from this case?
It depends on the leadership style.
Okay.
The police service commission also involved, because the police service commission also involved in the discipline of officers.
Okay.
But then the police have to start the process and then report to the police service commission. So now the IG now have to put a mechanism to ensure that bad eggs who are bringing bad image, who are trying to destroy, whose action is destroying the corporate image of the good image of the force, should be flushed out and punished. And there should be a mechanism to sustain that and let the world see that something is being done. Because not pretend as if seemingly showing as if it's being shielded or being protected. No, that shouldn't be at all. There should be no room for such at all.
Thank you. So, but the NDLA, they now have, in the morning, all they wanted was to have ABBA KYARI in their custody. Now they have him in their custody. So what can we expect from them now? Given the fact that, we've had situations in Nigeria before in which many even criminal kingpins have been taken into custody, and then let alone senior police officers, whether they are suspended, and then you just find out after a few weeks or a few months the issue fizzle out. What can Nigerians expect from the NDLA itself as a drug fighting, as a drug law enforcement agency?
I think Buba Marwa will want to prove a point with this case.
Okay.
On the one side, you know too well that he's not a pusher side, and he's not somebody who is very patient with failure. Following his antecedents, you will know too well that he's one individual who would follow issues to its logical conclusion. Because of the public interest in this particular subject, I have a very clear feeling that you will not expect anything less. Once they wrap up the investigation, I mean, it is very overwhelming, the level of evidence that they have. Once that is done, I have a feeling that they might have to initiate a prosecution of him. So the challenge would be that in between, would the case of the extradition now come up, eventually to now extradite
to the US.
To the US. So that would be a drama that Nigerians would be paying serious attention to watch and see what pops up in the next few days. But to be very honest, I think this is actually a litmus test for the NDLEA to demonstrate very clearly that the new vision they have as regards to creating some kind of integrity is actually being restored. So what we want to see, or what Nigerians would expect in the next few weeks, would be a consistent debriefing of the public around the progress they are making. Yes, it will be sub judice to come to the public and start talking about some of these things. But of course also, because of the nature and the public interest conversation around it, there might be some kind of public briefing that will not jeopardize the entire process. But one thing that I can assure you is that we have not seen the end of this. There is still a wider chain of those who might still come into the net, because as investigation progresses, that there are likely going to be new stakeholders, whether within the service, it might not just even be within the police, it might be within the NDLEA, it might be within other security institutions and agents, but the challenge would be that it might even be within the political class, so we have not seen the end. There are quite a lot of individuals that might be culpable, but my fear would be that once a very influential public office holder is involved, and when I mean involved, would be that, look, I have done a favor in the past, so this is the time where I needed you to pay back by some act of So how does the political elites respond?
Talking about political elites, the office of the Attorney General is both a political one, but also a legal one as well. So what, as a lawyer yourself, what role does the Attorney General or his office, what role does it have to play in this matter, particularly as the NDLA move towards prosecution?
Yeah, the NDLA will do the carry out the investigation. And after investigation, if they've gathered all the necessary evidence, both documentary and everything, and they found him culpable with all these accomplishments and so forth, they will now charge the case to court, and they will charge to the competent court, and then the prosecution. Now that's when the Attorney General's office comes in to make sure the case is diligently prosecuted.
Can they? Is there any way they can say, okay, we are not interested in this case? We don't. Okay.
No, he has a duty. He has a duty. He's the first number one chief officer of the law of the country. Even the constitution now gives him that power. So he cannot say no. He can say, but this case should be what they call nulli prosequi. He can say, okay, terminate this case or continue with the investigation, but he can never say nulli prosequi. And his own is to ensure that justice is done and done in such a way that it does not affect the corporate image of Nigeria, of the country, because we live like now we have this relationship between the U.S. and Nigeria, and we don't do anything that will show as if we tolerate criminality, and we don't carry out diligent investigation and take appropriate action. So I think the Attorney General will do the needful when the case, after thorough investigation, be referred to him for prosecution.
Thank you. So, Mr. Salahuddin, the reason why the Attorney General's office came on is because there were allegations during the issue of the extradition and so on, that if that office really intended that he be extradited to the U.S., then it would be their job to do so, because it is their job to ensure that cases of this kind are dealt with. Do you see a similar scenario playing out in this case? As our final question, before we just...
the office of the Attorney General has remained one of the biggest controversy since the return to this administration. And if the Attorney General tomorrow says that, look, I am interested, bring the file to me, and he actually lives in this office, there is really hardly, I mean, the media and civil society will just continue to make noise, but of course, it would have just then sat down there for until only God knows when. So that is actually a major issue. And of course, citing the recent example of the Adedo in the hotel, Hilton Hotel in Ife, where somebody was killed, and of course were brought to Abuja, and the police said, look, we are not interested in further prosecuting this, and they withdrew from that particular case. That then means that there seems to be some level of tempo that is dropping, and the momentum is also not. So these kinds of situation, and when things like this happen with the kind of amount that was given in bribe, that was the money that was given in bribe.
Yes.
You can imagine how much more will probably be kept somewhere or had gone into additional. So that is an amount that is given to one person in terms of, and where this kind of monies and transaction happen. I tell you, there is a lot of big wigs that might be, and that is where the fear really lies. Like
so do you have any fears that this case might not end in the way Nigerians expect? Just 10 seconds.
My respite will be that the personality of Buba Marwa is not a push aside, and I know that he might just stand his ground and see this through.
Thank you very much. On that note, this is where we draw a curtain to this program. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Police Commissioner CP Lawrence Alobi. Thank you also, Mr. Salahuddin Hashim, for having been with us all this time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to viewers for staying with us. We hope that you'll be with us again tomorrow when we bring you another edition of Daily Politics on Trust TV. I am Suleiman Suleiman. Good night.